Commander Ryan Blake stood at the viewing window of the UES horizon, watching as the massive alien space station grew larger with each passing minute. The structure was unlike anything he had ever seen in his 15 years as a Navy SEAL, stretched for miles in every direction, with towers that twisted and curved in impossible ways. Strange lights pulsed along its surface like a giant heartbeat. "First time seeing alien architecture?" Captain Jake Morrison asked as he joined Blake at the window. The captain was a veteran of deep space missions, but even he seemed nervous. "About what lay ahead?" "Yes, sir," Blake replied, his voice steady, despite the churning in his stomach. "It's bigger than the report suggested." Morrison nodded. "Nexus Prime is home to over 50 million beings from 12 different species. Today, we become the 13th. Blake felt a surge of pride at those words. Humanity had worked for decades to reach this moment. After years of sending radio signals into space and receiving no response, first contact had finally happened 3 months ago when a Galactic Council ship had appeared in Earth's solar system. The aliens had been peaceful, offering humanity a chance to join their community of worlds. "Remember your briefing, Commander," Morrison continued. "We're guests here. Our job is to observe, learn, and make a good first impression." "Understood, sir." Blake's training had taught him to assess every situation for potential threats, but he knew this mission was different. These aliens claimed to be peaceful, and humanity needed their advanced technology and knowledge to survive in a dangerous galaxy. The ship's communication system crackled to life. "Captain Morrison, please report to the bridge," receiving docking instructions from Nexus Prime.
"What is?"
Morrison left. Blake continued watching the station grow larger. He could see other ships moving around it, some shaped like Earth vessels, but others that defied description. One looked like a living creature with wings that moved slowly through space. Another was a perfect sphere that glowed with its own light. Impressive, isn't it? Dr. Peter Walsh approached the window, carrying a tablet filled with notes about alien biology and culture. The scientists had spent weeks preparing for this mission, studying every piece of information they had about the Galactic Council species. "It's certainly big," Blake agreed. "Any new intelligence on what we should expect?" Walsh adjusted his glasses and consulted his tablet. "The Zephyrians will likely be our biggest challenge. They're a warrior species that values strength and honor. Above everything else, their representative Vexstar has never been defeated in combat." Blake raised an eyebrow. "Never?" "According to our information, he's fought over 200 battles in various conflicts across the galaxy. The Zephyrians respect only those who can prove themselves in combat." "What about the other species?" "Altarians are traders and negotiators. They're small, about 4 feet tall, with large eyes and gray skin. Very peaceful. The Corvin are insect-like, but highly intelligent. They communicate through chemical signals as well as speech." Walsh scrolled through his notes. "There are 9 other species, each with their own customs and ways of thinking." Blake absorbed this information, filing it away for later use. In his experience, knowing your allies was just as important as knowing your enemies. Lisa Carter joined them at the window, her diplomatic credentials clearly visible on her uniform. She had been chosen to lead the negotiations because of her experience with difficult international situations on Earth. "Gentlemen, we'll be docking in 30 minutes. Are we ready?" "As ready as we can be," Walsh replied. "I've prepared cultural briefings for each species we'll encounter." Blake nodded. "My team is prepared for any security situations that might arise." Lisa looked at him with concern. "Commander, I hope you understand that your role here is purely protective. We cannot afford any aggressive actions or misunderstandings." "Of course, Ambassador. But if these aliens pose a threat to the delegation, I'll respond appropriately." "That's exactly what I'm worried about," Lisa said. "Your definition of appropriate might be very different from theirs." Blake felt a flash of irritation. He had served his country with distinction for over a decade, completing missions that most people couldn't even imagine. He knew how to handle himself in delicate situations. "I understand the importance of this mission, Ambassador. Won't do anything to jeopardize it." The ship shuddered slightly as it began its final approach to the docking bay. Through Through the window, Blake could see the interior of the station. The walls were lined with what looked like living plants, and creatures moved along walkways that seemed to grow from the floor itself. "Captain," Morrison's voice echoed through the ship's speakers. "All hands, prepare for docking. Diplomatic team, report to Airlock 3 for final briefing." The four humans made their way through the ship's corridors to the designated airlock. Morrison was waiting for them, along with two other crew members who would remain on the ship during the negotiations. "Ladies and gentlemen," Morrison began, "in 5 minutes, we will make history. Humanity is about to take its first steps into a larger universe. Each of you represents not just your own country, but our entire species." He looked at each of them in turn. "Dr. Walsh, your job is to learn everything you can about their science and technology. Ambassador Carter, you'll handle the formal negotiations. For Earth's membership in the Galactic Council, Commander Blake, you're responsible for our safety. But remember that your actions will be seen as representative of human military thinking." Blake straightened. "I won't let you down, sir." "I know you won't." Morrison checked his watch. "The aliens have provided us with translation devices that will allow us to communicate with all the species present. They've also given us basic information about their customs. But remember that we're dealing with beings who have been part of galactic civilization for thousands of years. We're the newcomers here." The airlock systems activated, and Blake felt his ears pop as the pressure equalized. Red lights turned to green, indicating that the atmosphere on the other side was safe for human breathing. "Here we go," Morrison said. Pressing the control that would open the outer door, the door slid open, revealing a corridor that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were smooth and curved, glowing with a soft blue light that came from no visible source. The air smelled strange, like flowers mixed with something metallic. Waiting for them was a group of beings that Blake had only seen in photographs. The Altarian ambassador was indeed small and gray, with eyes that seemed to take up half of its face. Next to it stood a creature that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a spider, clicking and chirping in what Blake assumed was the Korvan language. But it was the third figure that caught Blake's attention immediately. Vexstar was even more impressive in person than in the intelligence reports. The Zephyrian stood nearly 8 feet tall, with scales that looked like natural armor covering his entire body. His eyes were bright yellow, and when he looked at Blake, the human felt like he was being measured for weaknesses. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," the Altarian said, in accented but clear English. "I am Ambassador Kell. We are honored to meet the representatives of humanity." Lisa stepped forward, offering what she hoped was an appropriate greeting. "Thank you for welcoming us. We're excited to learn about your civilization and hopefully earn our place among you." Vexstar's laugh was like rocks grinding together. "Your place? We shall see what your species is truly made of, little human." Blake felt his muscles tense at the alien's tone, but he forced himself to remain calm. The mission was just beginning, and already he could sense that the path ahead would be more difficult than anyone had imagined. The human delegation followed Ambassador Kelm through the winding corridors of Nexus Prime. Blake kept his eyes moving, automatically cataloging exit routes and potential defensive positions. The station was a maze of curved walls and branching pathways that seemed to follow no logical pattern he could understand. Other aliens moved past them in the corridors. Some floated rather than walked, their bodies rippling like jellyfish. Others scuttled along the walls on multiple legs, paying no attention to gravity. Blake had trained for combat in every environment Earth could offer. But this place challenged everything he thought he knew about tactics and movement. "The council chamber is just ahead," Keln explained, his large eyes blinking slowly. "Representatives from all 12 species are gathered to meet you. Oh, this is a rare honor. Usually new species must wait years before being granted an audience." Lisa nodded gratefully. "We understand the significance of this meeting. Humanity is ready to prove itself worthy of membership." Vexstar, who had been walking silently behind them, made a sound that might have been laughter. "Prove itself? Your species has barely left its home system. What could you possibly offer the council?" Blake felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice level. Humanity has survived and thrived despite facing countless challenges. We don't back down from a fight. Fighting among yourselves hardly qualifies as strength, Vextar replied, his yellow eyes fixed on Blake with obvious amusement. True warriors face enemies that can actually threaten them.
Dr. Walsh
Quickly stepped between them. What Commander Blake means is that humanity has shown remarkable adaptability. We've overcome natural disasters, diseases, and conflicts to build a peaceful civilization. Peaceful. Vextar's scales shifted color slightly, becoming darker. Your history records speak of constant warfare. How can you claim to be peaceful? Morrison cleared his throat. We've learned from our mistakes. The United Earth government represents humanity's commitment to working together instead of fighting each other. They reached a massive circular chamber with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. 12 different seating areas were arranged around the room, each designed for a different alien species. Some had chairs, others had platforms, and a few were filled with what looked like water for aquatic beings. Impressive, Walsh whispered. Pulling out his tablet to record observations, the various alien representatives were already in place. Blake counted at least 30 beings, representing species he had only read about in briefing documents. Some looked almost human, while others were so alien that he couldn't immediately identify which end was the head. Honored delegates, Keln announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I present the representatives of species number 13, the humans of Earth. A wave of clicking, chirping, and other alien sounds filled the room. Blake assumed this was applause, though it sounded nothing like human clapping. Morrison stepped forward and bowed slightly. On behalf of humanity, I thank you for this opportunity. Come seeking friendship and knowledge. Knowledge is earned through experience, rumbled a voice from across the chamber. Blake looked up to see a massive creature covered in what looked like living crystal. What experiences have shaped your species? Lisa moved to stand beside Morrison. Humanity has faced extinction multiple times throughout our history. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and natural disasters. Each challenge has made us stronger and more determined to survive. Survival is basic, another alien called out. This one looked like a tree, with eyes scattered across its bark-like skin. All species survive, or they cease to exist. What makes you unique? Blake watched Lisa search for an answer. This wasn't going as planned. The aliens seemed unimpressed. By humanity's achievements, we never give up, Blake said suddenly, stepping forward despite Lisa's warning look. When others would surrender, humans keep fighting. When the odds are impossible, we find a way to win. The chamber fell silent. Blake could feel dozens of alien eyes studying him. Vextar rose from his platform, towering over everyone else in the room. Bold words from such a small creature. But words are meaningless without action to support them. Then perhaps a demonstration is in order, Blake replied, before anyone could stop him. Lisa grabbed his arm. Commander, that's not appropriate. But Vextar was already moving toward the center of the chamber. Yes, a demonstration would be ... educational. In Zephyrian culture, you have a saying. A warrior's worth is measured not by his words, but by his willingness to face defeat with honor. The other aliens began talking among themselves in their various languages. Blake heard excitement in their voices, even though he couldn't understand the words. What kind of demonstration? Morrison asked, though Blake could tell the captain already knew he wouldn't like the answer. Combat, Vextar said simply. Single combat between warriors. It is how my people have settled disputes for 10,000 years. Absolutely not, Lisa said firmly. We're here for diplomatic negotiations, not gladiator matches. But the damage was done. Other aliens were now calling out their agreement with Vextar's suggestion. The crystal creature's voice boomed across the chamber. An excellent idea. Let us see what human warriors are truly capable of. Blake felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. That came before a mission. This wasn't what they had planned, but he had been in worse situations. I accept. Ryan, no, Walsh said urgently. You don't understand what you're agreeing to. I understand perfectly, Doc. This alien thinks humans are weak. I'm going to show him how wrong he is. Morrison stepped between Blake and Vextar. Commander, stand down. That's an order. Blake looked at his captain, then at the aliens watching them with obvious interest. Some seemed excited by the prospect of combat, while others appeared concerned. But all of them were judging humanity. Based on what happened next? Sir, with respect, they're testing us. If I back down now, they'll think all humans are cowards. If you fight and lose, they'll think we're weak anyway, Lisa pointed out. I won't lose, Blake said with complete confidence. I've never lost a hand-to-hand combat engagement in my entire career. Vextar's laugh filled the chamber. Neither have I. Little human, neither have I. The two warriors faced each other in the center of the room. Blake was 6 feet tall and built like the elite soldier he was, with muscles honed by years of intense training. But standing next to Vextar, he looked like a child facing an adult. Perhaps we should reconsider, Keln suggested nervously. Surely there are other ways to demonstrate human capabilities, but it was too late. The other aliens were already moving their seating to get better views of the coming fight. Blake could see credits or whatever aliens used for money changing hands as they placed bets on the outcome. The rules are simple, announced the crystal creature, apparently serving as a referee. Combat continues until one fighter yields or cannot continue. No weapons, except natural abilities. Blake rolled his shoulders and stretched his neck. He'd trained in every form of hand-to-hand combat known to humanity. Boxing, wrestling, martial arts from across Earth's cultures. He had fought men bigger than himself, and won through superior technique and conditioning. Vextar simply stood still, his scales shifting to a deeper shade of red. His breathing was slow and controlled, like a predator preparing to strike. Lisa made one last attempt to stop the fight. Commander Blake, I'm ordering you to stand down as the senior diplomatic representative. Blake looked at her with respect but shook his head. I'm sorry, Ambassador, but this isn't about diplomacy anymore. It's about proving that humans deserve to be here. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the constant background hum of the station's systems seemed to fade away. Blake could hear his own heartbeat as he prepared to face an opponent unlike any he had ever encountered. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice warned him that he might be making a terrible mistake. But Blake had never listened to that voice before, and he wasn't about to start now. The fate of humanity's relationship with the galaxy was about to be decided by two warriors in a circle of alien spectators. And Blake was determined to make sure his species came out on top. The crystal creature raised what Blake assumed was an arm. Before combat begins, let the challenge be formally declared according to Galactic Council tradition. Vextar stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over Blake. I, Vextar, of the Zephyrian warrior caste, challenge Ryan Blake of the human species to ritual combat. The stakes are honor and the right to speak for one's people before this council. Blake felt his pulse quicken. This was more than just a fight now. The outcome would determine how the entire galaxy saw humanity. I accept your challenge. Da-da-da-da. Human accepts the crystal being announced. Combat will take place in 1 standard hour in the ceremonial arena. Both fighters will have time to prepare. As the aliens began filing out of the chamber, chattering excitedly in their various languages, Lisa grabbed Blake's arm. What have you done? This isn't just about you anymore. You're representing all of humanity. I know exactly what I'm doing, Blake replied, though he was starting to understand the full weight of his decision. These aliens respect strength. If I back down now, they'll never take us seriously. Morrison approached them, his face grim. Commander, I should relieve you of duty right now for disobeying direct orders. Captain, I had to make a split-second decision. That alien was insulting our entire species. And now you might get yourself killed, proving a point, Walsh said, consulting his tablet frantically. I've been researching Zephyrian physiology. Their bone density is 3 times that of humans. Their muscle fibers are designed for explosive power that we can't match. Waved off the concern. I've fought bigger opponents before. Size isn't everything in combat. This isn't about size, Walsh continued. Their entire evolutionary history has been shaped by warfare. They're natural predators with reflexes and strength that evolution never gave humans. Then I'll have to rely on training and intelligence instead of raw power, Blake said. Navy SEALs are taught to overcome superior enemies using tactics and technique. Lisa looked around the empty chamber. The other species representatives seemed very interested. In this fight, some of them were clearly placing bets. Of course they were, Morrison said bitterly. We're the new species trying to prove ourselves? This is entertainment for them. Blake felt a surge of anger at that thought, but he forced himself to stay calm. Anger would only cloud his judgment, and he needed to think clearly about what he was facing. Tell me everything you know about Vexter, he said to Walsh. The scientist scrolled through his notes. He's been the Zephyrian military representative for over 20 years. Before that, he served in their planetary defense forces during the Corvin border conflicts. He's never been defeated in single combat, not once. Everyone can be beaten, Blake insisted. There's no such thing as an unbeatable fighter. Maybe not, Walsh agreed reluctantly. But consider this. The Zephyrians have been part of galactic civilization for over 2,000 years. They've fought wars against species with technologies and abilities we can't even imagine. If Vexter has never lost, it's because he's faced opponents far more dangerous than anything Earth has ever produced. Blake absorbed this information while they walked toward the quarters that had been assigned to the human delegation. The station's corridors were busier now, with aliens stopping to stare at the humans as they passed. Word of the challenge had obviously spread quickly. How long do I have to prepare? Blake asked. 53 minutes, Morrison replied, checking his chronometer. What do you need? Space to warm up and think. Maybe some information about the arena where this will take place. They reached their quarters, which were surprisingly comfortable despite being designed for multiple species. The furniture could be adjusted for different body types. The lighting could be modified to match various visual spectrums. Blake immediately began stretching, going through combat drills he had practiced thousands of times. His movements were precise and controlled, each technique honed by years of training and real-world application. Lisa sat down heavily in one of the adjustable chairs. I should contact Earth Command and inform them of the situation, Morrison said quickly. Not until we know the outcome. If Blake wins, this becomes a victory story. If he loses, he didn't finish the sentence. Walsh continued reading about Zephyrian culture on his tablet. There's something else you should know, Commander. In their society, losing a formal challenge doesn't just mean defeat. It means complete dishonor. The loser becomes an outcast, and by extension, so does their family, their clan, their entire species association. Blake paused in his exercises. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you lose this fight, humanity might not just be refused. Membership in the Galactic Council might be permanently branded as a dishonored species. Other civilizations might refuse to trade with us, share technology with us, or even acknowledge our existence. The weight of that possibility settled on Blake's shoulders like a lead blanket. He had made challenges before, but never one where the stakes were so high. Still, backing down now was impossible. The challenge had been formally accepted in front of witnesses from 12 different species. Then I won't lose, he said simply. Morrison looked at him with a mixture of admiration and concern. Blake, you're one of the finest soldiers I've ever served with, but you're also about to face something completely outside human experience. Maybe that's exactly what we need, Blake replied. Humans have always succeeded by adapting to new challenges. This is just another adaptation, chime sounded through their quarters, followed by Keln's voice over the communication system. Human representatives, please report to Observation Deck 7 for arena briefing. They made their way through more winding corridors to a large window that looked down into a vast, circular chamber. The arena was enormous, easily 200 feet across, with a smooth floor that seemed to be made of the same material as the station's walls. Combat will take place here, Keln explained. The arena automatically adjusts gravity and atmosphere for optimal fighting conditions. Medical teams from all species will be standing by. Blake studied the space below. There were no weapons visible, no obstacles or cover. Just an empty circle where two beings would test their strength against each other. What happens if someone is seriously injured? Lisa asked. Galactic medical technology is very advanced, Keln replied. Most injuries can be healed, though some damage may be permanent. Blake didn't like the way the alien emphasized the word permanent, but he pushed the concern aside. He had been injured in combat before and always recovered. Aliens were already gathering in the viewing areas around the arena. Blake could see hundreds of different beings taking seats or positions that allowed them to watch the coming fight. The excitement in the air was obvious, even across species barriers. Popular event, Morrison observed dryly. Combat between species representatives is extremely rare, Kellen explained. Most challenges are settled through negotiation or symbolic contests. Actual physical fighting almost never happens. Why not? Walsh asked. Because the consequences are too severe. A species that loses such a challenge faces years of reduced status within the galactic community. Blake felt his stomach clench, but he kept his expression neutral. Pressure was enormous, but pressure was something he had trained for his entire career. Vexstar appeared on the opposite side of the viewing area. Even from a distance, the Zephyrian looked imposing. His scales had shifted to a deep red color, and other members of his species had gathered around him. He's performing pre-combat rituals, Kellen observed. Zephyrian warriors always prepare their minds and bodies before battle. Blake watched his opponent move through what looked like a series of stretching exercises, but each movement was fluid and powerful in a way that human motion could never match. Time to go, Morrison said quietly. Blake nodded and headed toward the arena entrance. As he walked, he thought about everything that had led to this moment. Humanity's first contact with alien civilization was about to be decided by a fight between two warriors who barely understood each other's cultures, but Blake had never backed down from a challenge in his life. And he wasn't about to start now. Even if the fate of his entire species hung in the balance. Blake stood at the entrance to the arena, listening to the sounds of hundreds of alien voices echoing from the viewing areas above. The noise was unlike anything he had ever heard. Clicks, whistles, growls, and sounds that had no equivalent in any Earth language. Last chance to reconsider, Morrison said quietly. I can still try to negotiate a different solution. Blake shook his head. We're past that point, Captain. The challenge has been accepted. The only way out now is through. Lisa approached with a translation device clipped to her jacket. I've been monitoring the alien communications. Most of them are betting against you. The odds are heavily in Vexstar's favor. Good, Blake replied. I've always performed better when people underestimate me. Walsh handed him a small medical scanner. This will monitor your vital signs during the fight. If something goes seriously wrong, we'll know immediately. Blake clipped the device to his belt and checked his equipment one final time. He wore his standard combat fatigues and boots, nothing more. The rules prohibited any weapons or protective gear beyond what occurred naturally. The arena entrance opened with a soft hiss. Beyond it lay the circular fighting space, brightly lit from sources Blake couldn't identify. The floor looked smooth, but not slippery, designed to provide good footing for combat. Human fighter, please enter the arena, announced the crystal. Creature's voice over the communication system. Blake stepped through the entrance, immediately felt the attention of every alien in the viewing areas focus on him. The noise level dropped as creatures leaned forward to get their first good. Look at a human warrior. The arena was even larger than it had appeared from the observation deck. Blake estimated it was nearly 300 feet across with walls that rose straight up for about 50 feet before the viewing areas began. There was nowhere to hide, no tactical advantages to exploit. It's just open space where skill and strength would determine the winner. Across the arena, another entrance opened. Vexstar emerged, and Blake felt his confidence waver for the first time. The Zephyrian looked even more massive in the arena lighting. His scales had turned a deep crimson color, and muscles rippled under his natural armor as he moved. The two fighters walked toward the center of the arena. Blake could hear his own footsteps echoing off the walls. But Vexstar moved with surprising silence for such a large being. They stopped about 10 feet apart. This close, Blake had to crane his neck to look up at his opponent's face. Yellow eyes studied him with what might have been curiosity or amusement. You are smaller than I expected, Vexstar said, his voice carrying easily across the arena. Are you certain you wish to continue? Size isn't everything in a fight, Blake replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "We shall see." Vexstar began, moving in a slow circle around Blake. "Tell me, human, what is the greatest victory of your career?" Blake matched the Zephyrian's movement, keeping him in sight while looking for weaknesses or patterns. "I've completed over 50 combat missions without losing a single team member. Impressive. My greatest victory was against a Corvan battlemaster on their home world. He stood 12 feet tall and had 6 arms, each one capable of crushing steel. The fight lasted for hours." Blake felt sweat beginning to form on his forehead despite the comfortable temperature. "What happened to him?" He yielded. "When I broke his primary combat arms, an honorable opponent." Vexstar stopped circling and faced Blake directly. "Hope you will prove equally honorable." The crystal creature's voice boomed across the arena. "Fighters, prepare for combat. There are no rounds, no time limits. Combat continues until one fighter yields or cannot continue. Medical teams are standing by." Blake dropped into a combat stance he had used hundreds of times before. His weight was balanced on the balls of his feet, ready to move in any direction. His hands were raised but not clenched, prepared to strike or defend as needed. Vexstar's preparation was completely different. He lowered himself slightly, his massive hands hanging loose at his sides. His breathing became deeper and more controlled, like a machine powering up for operation. "Begin," the crystal creature announced. For a moment, neither fighter moved. Blake studied his opponent, looking for any sign of what attack might come first. Vexstar seemed content to wait, his yellow eyes tracking Blake's every movement. Blake decided to test his opponent's reflexes. He took a quick step forward and threw a fast jab toward Vexstar's midsection. Not expecting to land it, but wanting to see how the alien would react. Vexstar moved faster than Blake thought possible. One massive hand swept down and batted Blake's punch aside like it was nothing more than an annoying insect. The casual ease of the movement sent a chill down Blake's spine. Blake immediately stepped back and circled to his right. But Vexstar matched his movement effortlessly. The Zephyrian's footwork was perfect, maintaining distance and angle without any wasted motion. "You're quick," Vexstar acknowledged, "but speed without power is merely dancing." Blake tried a different approach. He feinted left, then dove right, aiming a kick at Vexstar's knee. If he could damage the alien's mobility, he might have a chance. His kick connected, but it felt like hitting a tree trunk. Vexstar didn't even shift his weight. Instead, he reached down with one hand and grabbed Blake's extended leg. Blake realized his mistake immediately. He was trapped, balanced on one foot with his other leg held in an unbreakable grip. He tried to twist free, but Vexstar's strength was overwhelming. The Zephyrian lifted Blake into the air by his leg, holding him upside down like he weighed nothing. Blake could see the arena spinning around him, the alien faces in the viewing areas becoming a blur. "This is the difference between our species," Vexstar said calmly. "You train to fight others like yourself. I have fought creatures you cannot imagine." Blake tried to curl up and grab Vexstar's arm, hoping to apply a joint lock or pressure point technique. But the alien's reach was too long. His scales provided natural armor against Blake's attempts to find vulnerable spots. Vexstar swung Blake around and released him. Blake flew across the arena, hitting the far wall with tremendous force. Pain exploded through his back and shoulder as he crumpled to the floor. The alien crowd erupted in sounds that Blake assumed were cheers and excitement. He could hear Lisa's voice calling his name from somewhere far above, but it sounded distant and muffled. Blake forced himself to stand, though his vision was slightly blurred. His left shoulder felt wrong, possibly dislocated, but he was still conscious and still able to fight. "You have courage," Vexstar said, approaching slowly. "Most opponents would yield after such an impact." "I don't know how to yield," Blake replied, spitting blood from where he had bitten his tongue. "Then you will learn." Vexstar moved forward with surprising speed for such a large being. Blake tried to dodge, but his injured shoulder slowed his reaction time. Zephyrian's massive fist caught him in the ribs, lifting him off his feet and sending him skidding across the arena floor. Blake rolled to avoid a follow-up attack and came up in a defensive crouch. He could feel at least 2 ribs were cracked, making it hard to breathe properly. He forced himself to ignore the pain and focus on survival. "Why do you continue?" Vextar asked, genuinely puzzled. "You cannot win. Your species is not built for this kind of combat." Blake wiped blood from his mouth and looked up at his opponent. "Because that's what humans do. We don't quit." He launched himself at Vextar in a desperate tackle, hoping to use his lower center of gravity to bring the alien down. For a moment, he thought he might succeed. His shoulder connected with Vextar's midsection. He felt the alien shift backward, but Vextar's balance was too good. Instead of falling, he brought both hands down on Blake's back, like a hammer. Blake felt something snap in his spine, and his legs suddenly stopped working properly. He collapsed to the arena floor, his vision going dark around the edges. Through the haze of pain, he could hear the alien crowd growing louder, their excitement reaching a fever pitch. Vextar stood over him, looking down with what might have been respect. "You fought with honor, human, but this ends now," Blake tried to speak, to tell the alien that he wasn't finished yet, but no words would come. His body wasn't responding to his commands anymore. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Vextar's massive fist descending toward his head, moving. With the precision and power of a machine designed for destruction, Blake's skull cracked under Vextar's final blow, the sound echoing through the arena like breaking stone. The human warrior collapsed completely, blood pooling around his head as his body convulsed once, then went still. The alien crowd fell silent. Even they seemed shocked by the brutality of what they had just witnessed. Vextar stood over Blake's motionless form, breathing heavily, his scales slowly shifting back to their normal color. "Medical teams to the arena floor," the crystal creature announced, its voice carrying none of its earlier excitement. Lisa was already running toward the arena entrance. Morrison and Walsh close behind her. They reached Blake just as the alien medical teams arrived with equipment that looked nothing like Earth technology. "Is he alive?" Lisa asked desperately, kneeling beside Blake's broken body. A spider-like Corvin medic ran several devices over Blake's still form, barely. Massive cranial trauma, spinal damage, internal bleeding. His survival chances are very low. "Then fix him," Morrison ordered, the Corvin's multiple eyes fixed on the captain. "Our medical technology is advanced, but we cannot work miracles. This level of damage would kill most species instantly." Dr. Walsh was already examining Blake with his own equipment. "His pulse is weak, but steady. If we can stabilize the brain. Swelling and repair the skull fracture." "You are not qualified to treat such injuries," interrupted an Altarian medic. "Human physiology is unknown to us." "Then we'll learn together," Walsh said firmly. "I know human biology better than anyone here. If you provide the technology, I can guide the treatment." The alien medics looked at each other uncertainly. Treating a dying member of a species they barely understood was not something they had trained for. "Please," Lisa said, looking up at them from where she knelt beside Blake. "He's not just a soldier, he's a father, a son. He has people who love him, waiting for him to come home." Something in her voice seemed to affect the medics. The Corvin clicked rapidly to its colleagues, then nodded. "We will attempt treatment. But you must understand, the damage is severe." They carefully lifted Blake onto a floating medical platform and rushed him toward the station's medical bay. Human delegation followed, leaving Vextar alone in the arena. The medical bay was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Machines that looked like living creatures monitored Blake's vital signs while others performed operations with tentacle-like appendages. Walsh worked alongside the alien doctors, translating human physiology while learning their advanced techniques. "Skull fractures repairable," reported the Altarian medic after several hours. "But the brain trauma is extensive. Even if he survives, there will likely be permanent damage." "What kind of damage?" Morrison asked. "Memory loss, motor function problems, personality changes. It is impossible to predict exactly." Lisa sat in a chair beside Blake's medical bed, watching the strange alien machines work to save his life. "This is my fault. I should have stopped him." "No," Morrison said quietly. "Blake made his own choice. He knew the risks. Walsh looked up from the medical readings he was studying. Actually, the Corvin doctor was wrong about something. Blake's chances aren't as bad as they thought. Human brains are more adaptable than most species. We have better recovery potential from traumatic injuries. What do you mean? Lisa asked. Human evolution was shaped by tool use and problem solving. Our brains develop multiple pathways for the same functions. If one area is damaged, others can sometimes take over. The alien medics gathered around Walsh's readings with obvious interest. Fascinating, the Corvin doctor clicked. This redundancy is most unusual. It may explain how your species survived so many extinction events. Hours passed. Blake remained unconscious while the medical teams worked to repair the damage to his skull and brain. The human delegation took turns sitting with him, refusing to leave despite the alien doctor's assurance that there was nothing more they could do. Meanwhile, word of the fight and its aftermath spread throughout Nexus Prime. Representatives from all 12 species gathered to discuss what had happened and what it meant for humanity's application to join the Galactic Council. The humans showed courage, rumbled the crystal creature. But courage without wisdom is merely foolishness. Perhaps, agreed Keln, the Altarian ambassador. But consider their reaction to their warrior's defeat. Instead of retreating in shame, they immediately began working to save his life. Vexstar, who had been silent since the fight ended, finally spoke. I have fought many battles against many species. Never have I seen such determination to preserve a single life. What do you mean? Asked the tree-like being. Watch their medical. Bay. The human doctor has not left his injured colleague's side for 14 hours. He shares his knowledge freely with our medics, asking nothing in return except their help in saving a life. The other aliens considered this. Most species in the galaxy valued individual achievement and strength above collective effort. Their ambassador also interests me, Vexstar continued. She could have blamed me for the severity of the injuries. Instead, she asked only that we help heal them. On the third day, Blake finally opened his eyes. His vision was blurry and he couldn't remember where he was or how he had gotten there. But he was alive, Ryan. Duh. Lisa's voice came from somewhere nearby. Can you hear me? Blake tried to speak, but only a whisper came out. Did I win? Walsh checked his medical readings with obvious relief. You're awake? That's the important thing right now. The fight, Blake insisted weakly. What happened? Morrison sat down beside the medical bed. You lost, Commander. Vexstar defeated you in less than 2 minutes. Blake closed his eyes, feeling the weight of failure settle on his shoulders. I'm sorry. I let everyone down, Lisa said firmly. You didn't let anyone down. Showed the galaxy what human courage looks like. But the council membership is still being discussed, Walsh interrupted. The fight isn't the only thing they're considering anymore. Over the following days, as Blake slowly recovered, the alien representatives continued their deliberations. But their focus had shifted from humanity's military prowess to something else entirely. They'd never abandoned their injured warrior, observed the crystalline delegate during one session. Even when defeat was certain, they continued fighting to save his life. Their doctors shared medical knowledge that could benefit all species, added a floating jellyfish-like being. They asked for nothing except cooperation and healing. Vexstar stood to address the assembly. I have fought this human and found him worthy of respect. He faced certain defeat with honor and never yielded, even when continuing meant death. But he lost, pointed out another delegate. Yes, he lost. But his people's response to that loss reveals their true character. They do not abandon their own. They do not retreat from challenges. They adapt, they learn, and they persevere. The vote, when it finally came, was not the overwhelming rejection many had expected after Blake's defeat. Instead, it was a narrow majority in favor of granting humanity provisional membership in the Galactic Council. Your species will be watched carefully, Kelnan informed the human delegation. This membership comes with responsibilities and expectations. Blake, still recovering, but able to sit up, nodded slowly. We understand. We won't let you down. You already have not let us down, Vexstar said, approaching the medical bed. Your defeat taught us more about human character than any victory could have. He extended one massive scaled hand toward Blake. "I am honored to have fought a worthy opponent." Blake reached out with his good arm and grasped the alien's hand. "Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth with news of their success, Blake realized something important. He had lost the fight, but humanity had won something much more valuable. They had earned the respect of the galaxy not through superior strength, but through their refusal to abandon hope. Their willingness to help others, and their determination to keep trying, even in the face of impossible odds. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers humanity could barely imagine, but they would face those challenges together as part of something larger than themselves. And perhaps, Blake thought, as he watched the stars through the medical bay window, that was the most human victory of all.